Check out my book review playlist, top link in the description. You might find another book review of mine that you might want to watch. So Dopamine Nation was a very easy read. It doesn't delve too deep into neurology or neurotransmitters and brain regions, but it instead focuses on real-world examples and scenarios and addictions that people have gone through, the patients of the writer of the book. There were references also to studies and experiments that were conducted to understand just how our brain works, and there was a particular focus on the pleasure-pain dichotomy, and it also explains how our brain even feels rewarded. There was a wide range of different stories, whether it's a sex addiction, drug addiction, or an alcohol addiction, and it details how these patients became addicted, what steps they took, and also the insights, the insights which helped them to combat their addictions. So the supporting material provides a scientific rationale behind the actions that people take. Now I'm going to start quoting the book. We've lost the ability to tolerate even minor forms of discomfort. We're constantly seeking to distract ourselves from the present moment to be entertained. All this trying to insulate ourselves from pain seems only to have made our pain worse. The reason we're also miserable may be because we're working so hard to avoid being miserable. Chocolate increases our brain's dopamine by 55%, sex by 100%, nicotine by 150%, cocaine by 225%, and meth by 1,000%. There's an after reaction to dopamine. What goes up must come down. With repeated exposure, our brains neuroadapt, making the pleasure weaker and shorter and the pain stronger and longer. Hedonism leads to anhedonia, the inability to enjoy pleasure. When we're abstaining from our addictions and we're in the side of pain, we crave our addictions just to feel normal. So our brains become dependent. This is experience-dependent plasticity. The behaviors can change our brain for a lifetime. Some brain changes are irreversible, but it is possible to detour around these damaged areas by creating new neural networks. So to summarize this first part, we need more reward to feel pleasure and less injury to feel pain when we are reinforcing our addictions. So don't judge yourself for having certain negative thoughts. Realize that instead it's a fear within you that wants to push you away from certain thoughts and behaviors. It's a survival instinct to picture and imagine exactly what you're trying to avoid. So don't run away from the painful emotions. Allow yourself to tolerate them so that you can understand them. When we're capable of regulating our actions and behaviors, we feel more aligned with our inner moral sense. In other words, our current self aligns with our ideal self. Just as pain is the price we pay for pleasure, so too is pleasure the reward for our pain. It's just in different time frames. So if you search for pleasure in the present, you'll feel pain in the future. If you choose to go for the more painful option in the present, you'll actually get more pleasure in the future. We need to treat pain with pain. We need to treat anxiety with anxiety. It's counterintuitive, but you can prevent great pain in the future with little pain in the present, basically. Denial is a disconnect between the reward pathway of our brain and the higher cortical brain regions that allow us to narrate the events of our lives, appreciate consequences, and plan the future. So I'll repeat that. Denial is a disconnect between the reward pathway of the brain and the higher cortical brain regions that allow us to narrate the events of our life, appreciate the consequences, and plan for the future. Truth-telling allows us to be more aware of the pleasure-pain balance and thereby helps in changing our behavior. The reason why I'm emphasizing this point in particular is we've got the part of our brain which is a reward circuitry, which we can let govern our life, and normally our addictions just keep falling into that circuitry. It's disconnected from the higher cortical part of our brain, which is more focused on the events of our life. It appreciates consequences. As long as you're going into your reward system, you're just going to deny that it's a bad thing, You're never appreciating the consequences of it in your prefrontal cortex. And also, it's used to plan your future. A really cool story, which I didn't put in my notes, but I need to tell it, is... So there are patients, opioid addicts, and they were given a prompt. They were prompted with, Mike was thinking about his future. He was planning to, and then the opioid addicts could write whatever they want. And average in the opioid addicts, on average, they would writing about what Michael was doing 9 days in the future across, different examples. But when you ask a non-opioid addict, someone who doesn't have addictions, what Michael was thinking about in the future, on average they were talking about something that was 4.5 years into the future. That's the difference between someone who's always reinforcing for short-term instant gratification through drugs, for example. They can't think that far ahead. When you're not addicted to these things, you've got a bigger scope of time, and that's only happening in your prefrontal cortex and not inside your dopamine conducted circuitry of rewards. Anyway, back to the notes. The most insightful thing I learnt from reading this book is oxytocin. It's a hormone which is involved with falling in love, the mother-child bond, and also the lifetime pair bonding of sexual mates. It binds to the receptors of the dopamine-secreting neurons in the brain reward pathway, and then enhances and fires the reward circuitry track. So in other words, oxytocin leads to an increase in brain dopamine. It also locks the neurons in that sort of reward circuitry once it does happen as well. So this perfectly describes the experience in my life I had where I felt the biggest rush in my life, which was also what triggered probably my worst addiction. When I was 15 and I was in love, one day I was looking at porn and an image appeared that looked similar to the girl that I was in love with. So in other words, oxytocin binded to my brain's reward circuitry and dopamine receptors, kick-starting an addiction that would then last over 8 years. In those 8 years, I never felt that peak again. I kept chasing it over and over. And worst of all, I created a sort of mold in my head, like a template of neural circuitry, which automatically triggers with almost every girl that I've found attractive since. So in other words, my perception of girls has fallen into an object of sexual desire as opposed to an appreciation of the character and what makes them fundamentally unique. This is why I have to be open and honest about it. It's a very scary reality that I've experienced. I've been suffering with this for a long time, and I'll admit I'm doing better than I was ever before in terms of avoiding porn, but I still feel like I haven't laid down the scaffolding for new neural circuitry so that I can have a more balanced and present outlook on women. If you've got any advice about how to deal with this, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, this has just been a massive problem for me. I'm very sad and ashamed to admit it personally, for not just that event that I explained when I was 15, other events in my life before it and after it as well, which have all just concocted this circuitry in my head which triggers automatically, and I really wish it wasn't the case. As soon as I find a girl attractive, my brain's already thinking about sex, and I really wished that wasn't the case. Shame makes us feel bad about ourselves as people, whereas guilt makes us feel bad about our actions. So shame and guilt are a gut punch of emotion. It's regret mixed with a fear of punishment and a terror of abandonment. Without shame, society would descend into chaos. Hence, feeling shame for transgressive behaviours is appropriate and good. Pro-social shame is predicated on the idea that we are all flawed, capable of making mistakes, and in need of forgiveness. We can leverage shame without shaming. The key here is accountability with compassion. So stop running away from whatever you're trying to escape, and instead turn around and face it, whatever it is. Finding and maintaining balance isn't immediate or permanent. They require patience and maintenance, and we must be willing to move forward despite the uncertainty of what lies ahead. We can't give in to our addictions. To summarize the book, the relentless pursuit of pleasure and avoidance of pain leads to pain. Recovery begins with abstinence. Abstinence resets the brain's reward pathway, and with it our capacity to take joy in simple pleasures. Self-binding creates a metacognitive space between desire and consumption. Pressing on the pain side resets our balance to the side of pleasure. And radical honesty promotes awareness. Pro-social shame affirms we belong to the human tribe. And lastly, instead of running away from the world, we must immerse ourselves in it. Building towards my better self isn't fun as long as I keep reinforcing my addictions. Thanks for watching, and again, do check out my book review playlist, top link in the description. You might find another book review of mine that you'd like to watch. Thanks for watching.